The race to 5G is on, and the battle for talent is getting fierce. Welcome to 5G Talent Talk with Carrie Charle, a podcast dedicated to helping you face the future workforce head on. Navigate this challenging talent landscape with innovative strategies to attract, retain, and engage people in this new world of work. Only here on 5G Talent Talk with Carrie Charle, CEO of Broadband Talent Solutions.
Hello, friends, and welcome to 5G Talent Talk. I am Carrie Charle, your host, and I am thrilled today to have with me Rod Hanson. He is the founder and CEO of Cityside Networks. Rod, thanks so much for joining me today.
Carrie, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I listen to this every week. I'm a faithful listener.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. I've been excited and waiting for you to be a guest. So here we are.
All right.
So, Rod, you've been in the industry a long time in telecom, and you've done quite a few different things. I'd love to hear more about that journey. I know part of it, but I'm sure there's more.
Oh yeah, no, I don't usually like to admit how long I've been in the industry, but since this is your show, we're going to do true confessions now at this point. So.
Perfect.
Yeah, I started in the industry, the wireless industry in 1992, if you can believe that. I was actually selling cell phones in Jacksonville, Florida for
Wow.
Cellular One, which was owned by McCaw Cellular back then. So I was selling, $1,000 Motorola brick phones, mostly to business. And that's how
I remember those. I remember those. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. They were a big deal and pretty expensive back then. So, but it was that's how I, dipped my toes into the industry. So, and in '96, I moved over to the development side of the business and started working for a consulting firm doing site acquisition work. I moved back to Seattle, which was my hometown, and worked for a company there. For a number of years doing site acquisition back in the days. At '96, it was crazy times. We went from 2 wireless carriers to 8 wireless carriers in each market. And so everybody and their brother was building, and it was a little like it is today. It was hard to find people. That's probably why it was so easy for me to get a job right out of the gate. Basically, if you could fog a mirror, you could come work in our industry, which is a lot of fun. So we were building new towers all over the country. I worked with VoiceStream. I worked with Nextel. I worked with Sprint. I worked with AT&T. So all of those guys from back in that time. It was that's when I fell in love with the industry. I think I finally found kind of my home. So, so did that. At one point, went over to AT&T and became their real estate manager for the Pacific Northwest. Worked on their deployments there, and in 2001, I left AT&T and started my own company called Realcomm Associates, based out of Seattle. And that was a ton of fun. We started out doing site acquisition work, and that grew into A&E and all different types of services up and down the West Coast. And did that. And in 2013, I sold that company to SmartLink. They needed a West Coast presence, and so we joined forces, and that was a great experience. And then had just an amazing opportunity in 2016 to go over to Crown Castle and became their vice president of small cells for the Western U.S. And that was such a great experience, and I learned a lot. And that's what led me to November last year, left Crown and started thinking about a new business idea. And in March of this year, we formed a company called Cityside Networks, which is what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. And that's when I got to know you, was when you were with Crown. And it's just so exciting to be able to feature your new company. And I do this often, to look at some new companies in our industry and what's going on and who's disrupting what. And so I want to hear more about Cityside Networks. Tell me the story behind it. How is it born and what problems do you solve?
Yeah, it's funny. So I left Crown. I updated my LinkedIn, basically, just that I received a phone call that same day from a who's now a co-founder, Jonathan Restivo. He and I worked together at SmartLink, and he called me and said, "Hey," and this is the middle of COVID, mind you, right? So everything's closed. About the only thing that was available was a Starbucks with outdoor seating. So he said, "Let's get together with coffee. I have some ideas." And so we sat down. He had a McKinsey consulting report on the evolution of 5G and the challenges, and it was all marked up, and
I
we
love
started
it.
talking about kind of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry, and started he and I started having brainstorming sessions, 3 o'clock every Monday. We'd call each other and spend a couple hours on the phone, just talking through the industry and some of the challenges, and trying to find some, to be really honest, look for some big problems to solve, right? And there are a few, and kind of what kept hitting me was I'd read a couple of articles. One was about the digital divide and the lack of broadband in our country. I think the article said there's 162 million people without true broadband internet in this country. 162 million Americans. So that was obviously a big issue, and it's getting a lot of press, especially with COVID. About that same time, I read an article that Japan at the end of 2020 had deployed a total of 700,000 5G sites. We were well below 100,000 at that particular time. And so that kind of struck me as a big problem as well. And it, my time at Crown taught me that deploying 5G infrastructure was slow and it was very expensive. And it struck me that part of the issue was, and when we were in markets where Crown had fiber, it was faster and less expensive. And so we started talking about, maybe the cart's before the horse with 5G. Maybe you really need to have that infrastructure in place, and that really is what gives you the green light to be able to do all these other things. At the same time, I've heard a lot of things about smart city and how everyone talks, but it's not being deployed. Well, it's not being deployed because it's too expensive, and it's too expensive because the infrastructure doesn't exist, the underlying infrastructure. So all these things just kept coming around, and we talked about, really, we felt like the solution is to look at a city and then start there. Start with the needs of the city and the people within that city, understanding all these different things that are going on. And it felt to us that fiber to the home and fiber to the premises should be the starting point. Focus there. How do you bring fiber past every home, down every street? And once you can do that, if you can figure out how to do that, the rest of it becomes much easier. And so we're focusing on building a shared infrastructure where we build the fiber throughout the city, and then we sign up our customers would be an ISP or an internet service provider. They sign a long-term lease on that fiber. We build it. And then as time goes on, it opens up and we bring on another ISP so that people are invited in to play, so to speak. And then that foundation allows us to build 5G, smart cities, edge data centers, and all those other great things that we know are coming. But it's done on a shared, consolidated network.
So Cityside takes a holistic approach. Tell me more about what that means and how does it benefit everyone, consumers, businesses, government, everyone?
Yeah. So the holistic approach really is a matter of looking at it again from the cities and citizens approach rather than from a single user approach. I mean, typically speaking, traditionally, especially on the wireless side, Verizon has a build plan. They go into a city, they build so many small cells and so many cell sites, and it's specifically for their need, which is great. AT&T, T-Mobile, and now Dish are all doing the same thing, but they're not coordinated in any way. And the infrastructure, while in the tower business it is shared, in the fiber and the small cell business typically it's not. Now Crown Castle obviously is very much into that business, but by and large, it's being done separately and with that single user in mind. What we're looking at is, okay, from the city's perspective and the citizens' perspective, how do we consolidate all those needs and look 30 years out, right? And so what should that look like? What would be the most effective and efficient way to deploy the network? And that's really the approach we're taking.
So let's look 30 years out. So what does this digital city of the future look like?
Yeah, I think you can Google that, and there's some really interesting videos out there, YouTube videos about the future. I'm certainly not a futurist, but what I'm seeing, quite frankly, is you've got the need for bandwidth for so many different ways. So you've got fiber to the home, fiber to the business, 5G wireless, which needs high-speed connectivity. You've got edge data centers and computing to be able to get low latency and get data closer to the user. You've got all types of smart city applications that are waiting in the wings for the infrastructure to be built. To truly enable autonomous vehicles, cars that not only drive by themselves but also know where the other vehicles are and can actually time their they know so well that there's a point where red lights will not be needed or stop signs because they'll just time it and go straight and you won't slow down. And there's so many things that nobody's thought of yet because the infrastructure is not there. I think the city of the future is digital, and the city of the future is the foundation is fiber, which is why we are focusing there first.
So what are the challenges with broadband today, and how do we solve for this? I know there's just everywhere you look there seems to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's a number of things. First and foremost, I think it's cost. It's so expensive to build, and the way we do that today, our current system is it's much like I mentioned earlier. Everybody's doing their own thing, and so today we're coming from a legacy of monopolies where the cable company and the ILEC local phone company built a single purpose network on a monopoly. And the funny part about that is that if you think about it, it's a little like if I want to buy internet in my home, I have two choices, right? I have the cable company and the local phone company. And if I want anything faster than 25 megabits per second, I really only have one choice, and that's the cable company, right? If I wanted to buy a product from, say, Verizon, Fios was now available in the East Coast. But if I wanted that, it doesn't come to my house. And so I look at it very similar to as if we were to build, I heard a very smart person use this analogy one time, and that was that in the United States, it's like if you wanted to drive a Ford vehicle, Ford would build all their own roads, right? And as long as Ford's road came to your house, you could buy a Ford. But if you wanted to buy a Chevy, then Chevy would have to build a separate road to come to your house. And that's
that.
Kind of the craziness of right. Kind of how our networks are deployed today. So, what we're looking to do is a wholesale shared network that would allow, other carriers to come on and utilize the network.
Sounds like a smart idea to me.
Yeah, it's something that's being done in Europe. It's not. I wish I could say I was original. Not even by a long shot. It's being deployed in Northern Europe. It's being deployed in parts of England now. It's become a very popular model, and we're starting to see it emerge in the United States.
So when you start a company, sometimes you run into this roadblock of the way it's always been done. And, that's really an uphill battle sometimes. And it's the story of disruptive technologies, right? You're telling the story, you're convincing people, even though it's like, look, this is the way we've always done it. And you want to paint that picture so they see things differently. What mountains do you have to climb to make the Cityside vision a reality?
Yeah, it's like anything when you're new in a relatively new concept. The biggest challenge really is twofold. It's that the ecosystem is not yet in place, right? There's when you think about ISPs, right? Most ISPs are connected to the network, and so therefore that's usually the case. At least in terms of larger scale players that are capable of signing long-term agreements, like what we're looking for and what we're dealing with our customers. And so having that an ISP that doesn't feel like they have to build and own is new. It's a new concept in the United States. So those particular that partnership is still a new concept. That's the ecosystem is still developing. So that's one area. And then secondly, I think just like anything else, industries get a bit entrenched in their own systems, right? And so it's a change of attitude. It's a change to where, an AT&T, for instance, can look and say, maybe in this market it might make sense for me to not build and deploy all this capital. Maybe it would make more sense for us to partner with an infrastructure owner, like they do on the tower business. That it reminds me, I'm unfortunately I'm old enough to remember when we were out doing site acquisition, and AT&T and Verizon and all the carriers didn't share towers. It was a no-no. I remember submitting a co-location application on behalf of Nextel to AT&T and being told it was a $100,000 application fee, non-refundable, and there was no guarantee that they would accept it. And so fast forward now, and that's the model. I mean, it makes sense for towers to be shared, and you've got the Crown Castles and the American Towers of the world out there doing that. That ecosystem now exists, and we're kind of in that early stage right now, I think, in the whole concept of open access.
So you talked about the digital divide, and I know this is a hot topic, and we hear about it and everything we read just about these days. So to bridge the digital divide, what needs to happen to make this possible? And I mean, what is in the way of getting there? Is it going to happen?
Yeah, I think it will. I think it's exciting. It's probably maybe one of the most exciting things about what we're doing. It is, number one, first and foremost, you got to break down old models, right? And because we have spent an inordinate amount of money building out these networks, but often what happens is we keep building in the same places. We don't build in areas that are not served, and that's being driven primarily by economics and by an old model, right? My analogy earlier about the Ford roads. Well, some of those Ford roads are dirt roads, and they keep repaving other roads, but they have never brought pavement to these first roads, and that's kind of the case with broadband today. I think what's exciting about that, though, is the current infrastructure bill that's on the table, and what I think has really been a complete resurgence of interest in building it out. I think both private and public interests now are fully aligned that we need to go ahead and make this investment, and so that's super exciting. And I think when you think about it, I feel like there's three things that you've got to be able to do to really break it down. One is you got to have people have to have access to it, which means we've got to build it. It's got to get to their home, right? So they that's got to happen, and it's happening. The second thing is we've got to find a way to make it affordable, so that people can afford it. And not everybody can afford a gigabit, of symmetrical service at $100 a month. And that technology is game changing for folks. And so I think the whole affordability piece is a big one. And I think that is where the federal government and state and local governments can help with that. I think there's some good programs to do that. And then thirdly is people need to know how to use it. Just because you have it, just because you can afford it, doesn't mean you can actually leverage it to better your life. And so education and training and digital literacy is the third piece of this. And at that point, it becomes pretty game changing.
That was well said. I can remember so many things that I've purchased or have, or software or pieces of technology that I never learned how to use, right? And so I had this thing that was supposedly going to make my life so much easier, and I never really learned how to use it. I was just too busy. So it's very well said. I think that's intuitive. So Rod, you've got some experience in workforce development with Realcomm, and you get the pain that we're feeling right now, with the push for broadband and fiber and deployment of 5G networks, and every telecom company in the US is just bursting at the seams with projects right now. And, we have a workforce crisis. I mean, it's very difficult to find people just simply in our industry. And now you add that on top of the fact that it's difficult for anyone to find people in this country with the labor shortage that we're facing. So I'd like to hear your perspective. Obviously, we can't solve this in 5 minutes, or maybe we can. So,
we'll give it a shot.
We'll give it a shot. But how are we going? How do we solve this? How are companies going to get the people they need to grow? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel here for us?
Yeah, I think it's funny because as I mentioned, back in '96. That was the issue. I mean, you couldn't find people because this is a brand new industry that didn't exist to the level it does now. And so there was people were coming in from all different walks of life. We had a lot of people coming from the military, folks coming in from the real estate background, legal, you name it, other types of construction. And so I'm fortunate enough that I got to watch that. And I think for me, as I look, now we're more established. We're just trying to add. I think the number one thing you want to be thinking about, that I think about, is, first and foremost, make sure you keep the back door closed. You don't want to be bringing in talent and lose talent, right? At the same time. You want to make sure, and that actually helps you from a recruiting perspective. But the key is, create an environment where people feel appreciated and they're part of a great team, right? That there's clear, it's super clear how they contribute, what the goals are of the company, and then how they can contribute to those goals, I think creates a much more positive environment. I've been lucky enough to work in some really highly functional teams. And there's just a buzz, that you walk in and there's this positive energy, and people are busy and they're working, and it's very contagious, right? So first and foremost, create an environment where people want to be and stay, right? And people don't use the word fun enough, in my opinion. I really believe that it's really important you create an environment that's fun. And I don't mean forced fun, right? My old boss at Crown used to joke around about, he goes, "Okay, folks, now it's time for some forced fun," right? You do these, I'm talking about, creating an environment where people are excited and they're having fun, and it's okay to celebrate your wins, and it's okay, to not feel threatened if things don't go perfect, right? Because rarely do they. So I think number one for me is creating that environment. That creates a magnet for people, because this industry, it's a big industry and it's a small industry. People know each other in this industry, and people network, and you build a reputation where it's a great place to work, and recruiting becomes much, much easier. Beyond that, I think, and a lot of people have talked about this, is once you have that established, you need to create paths for people for their career through training, development, mentorship. Those are things that allow people not only to get into the industry, but to create a career path within that industry, so that people stay, and they invite other talented people from wherever they came from. I think it's there's no magic bullet, but my experience has been that if you can create that environment, it just becomes a much, much easier place. We're in a super exciting industry, and it's more exciting than it's ever been. And people should want to come in and be a part of it. So I think that's really important, is to become a talent magnet.
Ooh, I like that. A talent magnet.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's I might steal that from you, but I'll give you credit.
There we go.
That's great. No, that's well said. Well said. So what excites you about the future and Cityside Networks and your vision? Like, what just lights you up and gets you just to jump out of bed every day?
Yeah, it's honestly, I love our industry. I like I said, in '96, it was when I felt like I was home. All the dysfunction and craziness of our industry, somehow I fit in just great. We're one big dysfunctional family.
Me too, exactly.
But I really enjoy what we do, and what excites me is that the industry is evolving very quickly right now, and I think in a really positive way. The convergence of wireline and wireless is happening. Big tech is converging as well, and all of these things are finally becoming integrated, and that's exciting, and to be a part of that is really exciting. And then when I look at the economic and social transformation that is possible, right? We talk about digital divide. There is an ability to transform people's lives through this, and that's super exciting to me, and it's something that kind of keeps me excited and motivated.
You've got a bigger purpose.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, no, that's great. Rod, where can we learn more about Cityside Networks?
Well, it's pretty easy. It's you can go on the website. It's a quick www.citysidenetworks.com. And you're also welcome to ping me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and I post occasionally on there. I'd love to hear from folks. Have any questions or anything we can help with. Obviously, if you're an ISP, yes, please reach out. That would be fantastic.
Exactly.
But no, I think that's probably the easiest thing. And I've been around the industry a long time, so a big network of folks. So feel free to reach out.
Rod, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that your company is going to be a huge success. And it just lights me up to hear you talk about the way that your technology and your ideas can really make a difference, not just in broadband and I mean really in people's lives. And you said it. I mean, it's like you're doing something that can transform people's lives, and it just feels good. So thank you for starting the company, Cityside Networks. Thank you for just stepping out there and being the entrepreneur that you are and taking a risk. And like I said, I have no doubt this is going to happen. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you for this podcast. I think it's a unique opportunity to listen to some really talented people and bring us all together as an industry. I appreciate you doing this. I really do. I think you do a great job.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you. I appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another informative episode of 5G Talent Talk, brought to you by RCR Wireless News, Telecom Careers, and Broadstaff Talent Solutions. As we advance into the future, we promise to bring you the resources you need to navigate this ever-changing landscape of 5G to help you attract, retain, and engage people in this new world of work. To access the show notes or leave a review, visit broadstaffglobal.com. Until next time.